I'm Courtney, Outlander behind the scenes. I do this discussion. I do cast and crew interviews. We are talking about 413, which is called Man of Worth. And we are missing our beloved Antoinette today. Antoinette has had a death in the family, and she is extremely heartbroken and unable to participate at this time. So we just send her our love, and we are going to carry
Definitely.
on without her. And Catherine may do an Antoinette impression later. I'm not sure. So who else is with me?
I'm Catherine. I am a family physician who enjoys both the books and the show in equal measure, which is an Antoinette phrase. um, and I'm a contributor to Blacklanders. I apologize if I sound a little bit like Barry White right now. I'm just getting over the flu.
And I'm Carmen, and I write the Outlander Anatomy blog. I thought it was a cool idea to write a blog on that topic because of all of the medicine and pathology and anatomy that appears in Diana's books. And it was gave a lot of
Mhm.
context to be able to write lessons based on those. What are we drinking today?
Yeah, go for it, Carmen.
Wait, hold on. Let me get mine.
Your Theraflu.
Actually, actually, no, I have orange juice and whiskey, vitamin C, and one part of a deconstructed hot toddy. It is medicinal. Everyone knows whiskey's medicinal. Actually, I think
Right.
it's bourbon, but it's
All right, Carmen, what are you drinking?
I am drinking today of the remnants of a bottle of very, very fine champagne because
Mm.
yesterday was my 56th wedding anniversary. And my husband and I celebrated it with a lovely bottle last night. So there was a little left, and I'm having a glass full today.
56
Mhm.
years, dude. That is an accomplishment in this day and
It
age.
really is.
Do you like him?
Yes. I actually, we had a discussion about this yesterday. He and I did. I like him more now
Mhm.
than I did when we were first married because he's also a physician and he has a PhD in anatomy. We have a really lot in common, and we got our PhDs together at the same time. And he took the hiatus in his medical training to get his PhD, and then he graduated with both degrees at the same time. And we just really have a lot that to talk about and to observe and things like that. And he's a really interesting person.
Let's talk about 413. I'm drinking water.
Carmen's earrings match what we're talking
I
about.
wore these in honor of their huichol earrings, which are
Hmm.
Indians of Central America. But I wore them
Hmm.
in honor of these, and I made them. They're
Oh, nice,
these of these episodes for the Native
nice.
Americans in these episodes.
I really liked this episode. I thought there were some really well done scenes from the book. It kept me very engaged. The creative changes mostly worked for me. There were some surprises that were fun, and thought it was well written and well done, and I liked where it ended up.
I also really liked it. This I don't remember the books well enough in detail, so I couldn't say where they deviated except for where it was obvious. And then the obvious deviations I actually quite enjoyed. Um, I thought the acting was done very well. I thought it flowed very well. Everything was done, I felt, at the top of its game as far as Outlander is concerned. So I very much enjoyed it. And the only reason I didn't was because I knew it was the last episode of the season.
I would rank this, or my impression of this episode was good to great. I thought there were a lot of really great parts. I thought there were a number of good parts. There were a couple of warts, which we may or may not get into later that I observed. But I thought the costuming, the sets, the acting were just really, really great, and I was transported into that time era, I felt. And when I'm weeping after the fifth time of watching it, I know that it's that it has affected me deeply.
So let's do favorite scenes and what worked for you. Catherine, you go first.
Okay. My favorite scene was the when young Ian went through the gauntlet. And the reason it was my favorite scene was because there was some question as to what the meaning of Roger going through and him saying, "You're not ready," being told he wasn't ready or that he was still going to be a captive. And I immediately saw it as a rite of passage, as a gauntlet that had he gotten through, he would have been absorbed into the tribe. He was so overjoyed. And then at the end, when he started making the same joyful sounds as the others, it was just such a heartwarming, joyful, um, and it just seemed like all the bad mouthing of how horrible the Mohawk were because they were beating Roger. It just suddenly made sense. It was like it wasn't about them. It was simply about the strength of the person going through the gauntlet. And more than likely, each and every one of those people in the gauntlet went through it also.
I was impressed by his face. I mean, talk about, they say face splitting grin. Like literally, it looked like his face was going to split open. The joy. We haven't seen that face from young Ian so far. That really impressed me. And in thinking about it, he never really got to join his own culture because of the timing of his birth. His culture was decimated. So, and he's heard about it and he knows his, Jamie and all his family, but this is an opportunity to actually go through the rites of passage and become a young man in a culture that's at that time intact.
But the fact that he spoke Mohawk meant that he had spent a lot of time around them anyway. So obviously he had a lot of respect. So it was great to see someone who's coming into his manhood being respected by people he obviously respected also.
Just a little BTS on that. John Bell, I saw him in Paris at LandCon 2, and he, in this small group setting, he said one of the highlights for him of that season is learning Mohawk.
He's actually taking Mohawk lessons. I heard that this week because he wants to be competent in the speech, in the future. So he's actually taking Mohawk lessons. It's apparently a difficult language to learn.
I thought it would be interesting if somebody speaks both Gaelic and Mohawk to compare those languages. I don't know, because when I look at Gaelic, I can't tell how to pronounce anything.
It's more phonetic, though, it seems like. Whereas to me, the Gaelic doesn't. The sounds are not what the letters look like they might be. Whereas to me, when I look at the Mohawk spelled out and then the way that it's said, it does look somewhat phonetic. Not always.
Well, Agav O'Brien says that once you understand the sounds that the letters make in the alphabet, it is phonetic, the Gaelic. But they don't make the sounds that we expect them to make that are made in English.
I also wanted to say about the Ian scene before we happened to leave that. I thought he leapt like a deer and scrambled like a squirrel. I just thought his physicality, I hope he's the one that did it. I looked carefully and it sure looked like it wasn't a double. But that was extraordinarily impressive. Roger tried to muscle his way through the gauntlet, but I saw strategy and cunning and the very sort of thing that they could use in a warrior in their village to be added to their men. And so I thought it was just very lovely.
It was. Kind of played into him probably knowing something more about their culture than Roger did.
Well, and making a choice to join them versus Roger's like been walking for 2 months and then shows up there and he's injured and, not in his own time. I did read an interview with John Bell where he said that he's a pretty springy individual and that he did do 95% of his of the gauntlet was him. Yeah.
Springbok.
Awesome.
Did you have any more scenes or things that worked for you, Catherine, that you wanted to talk about?
The other scene that worked for me was when Roger came to River Run and Bree met him. That was the first time when they embraced and kissed. That was the first time that I felt invested in their relationship. It suddenly seemed warm and loving, and it came through very clearly through the screen. Prior to that, it would just seemed awkward, and that didn't seem awkward at all. It was very well acted, and I felt happy for them, which in the past I was indifferent before.
My favorite scene was the Ian trade, where he does say, you want me to be a man of worth. And that harkens back to the very first episode of this year, 401, where Jamie tells him that his parents want him to be a man of influence, and learning and a man of worth. And that certainly, I wept every time when when the three of them stood there and contemplated what this decision meant to them. And the other scene that I thought was very, very well done was in the forest between Claire, Jamie, and Roger. The facial expressions on their face was just, and Claire wasn't too overbearing. She just once in a while said, hey guys, tamp down the testosterone a little bit. But then she sort of stood there with her arms folded, and watched Roger pummel her beloved Jamie. And I just thought, especially Roger's face as he was hearing the story unfold about Bree. Oh my gosh, he did a great job. He really did. I was deeply impressed.
Anything that really worked for you that you wanted to talk about?
I have to say that the entire Mohawk village worked for me. I honestly felt as though every time I watch it, I walk through the stones 200 years ago, and I'm standing there in the midst of these people looking at it, at a culture different than me, at mores different than my own, at relationships that have, their own way of expression. And yet I know that underneath that are the same human emotions that we all share and the needs that we all have. And I just thought that whole group of people deserve an Emmy for creating for us a village that we could walk into and at least come close to to being in that time. It was wonderful.
One of the things I appreciated that they did is that they didn't subtitle every single thing that was said in Mohawk. So what that felt as if we were in their space, they weren't in ours.
They did, that's sort of what they did in season 1 too, when they didn't explain all the Gaelic in English, and because it was explained that would let us feel what Claire was feeling, wondering what in the world is going on, what is this culture like. Well, now she's in, all of them are in a totally different culture, and I think that they have pulled on to some of that same way of expression that was so successful in season 1. We could surmise a lot of it just by their expressions, because they did such a good job of projecting emotion, I felt. So yeah.
My favorite scene is the one that you mentioned, Carmen, which is between Roger, Claire, and Jamie. I thought that scene was so full and so rich and so well written. It flowed so beautifully, how he was realizing, like, oh, she's pregnant, and I think they said she was raped first. I don't remember, but
she was attacked.
She was attacked.
And then Jamie says she was raped.
Finally.
Yeah, and then when Jamie goes after Roger, I mean, it's great. And then the restraint that Jamie shows, and he would totally do that. Like, yeah, you can beat the crap out of me. You're owed me. And then I liked also that Claire made herself look away and not do like the show Claire thing where she jumps in and
Moralizes.
saves the day or something, or says, let me sit you both down for a discussion. Yeah, I just thought that scene was beautiful. And my next one was the Ian goodbye. For all the reasons you said, it just was, I thought John Bell and Sam Heughan just, they all of them in both of those scenes were so strong for me. So what worked for me? Mercosta. I loved it. I was like, I have never been more shocked in Outlander, I don't think. We didn't do 410, which I can't even think of the name right now, but
the Deep Heart's Core.
Yeah, for me, it was a bit of a desert of an episode, but one of the Oasis moments was Jocasta and Murtaugh when they see each other for the first time, and it was literally like a 30-second scene, but I just loved how they both played that. I loved how it was written. I don't know if you guys picked up, after she throws the whiskey in his face and he has a hold of her arm, you can hear her breathing.
Yes.
She's like,
the shaking.
Yes.
Yeah, she was shaking.
That gives new meaning to the term foreplay.
Yeah, I mean, they're frisky. And I love that she has just said, oh, I'm an old woman, however she said that. It's like, well, I guess you're not that old. Yeah, I loved the whole thing. Loved it.
They looked good together, don't you think?
I think they did.
Appropriate.
They have great chemistry. They have great chemistry. Yeah.
Yes.
And it was wonderful. I think an older couple having a romantic relationship. It's so rare on television. It is actually real. People don't stop having sex just because they turn 60. And then, and so it was just wonderful to see. The only part I didn't like about that, however, was the fact that there was violence right before. And there just seems to be a lot of that. It's like, I'm mad at you, but I'm going to have sex with you anyway.
Well, I think there's a friction and a tension.
Yeah, just fighting as foreplay doesn't work for me.
I mean, if he had belted her, but
yeah, true. But I'm just
little
like
whiskey
fighting.
In the
any
face.
Fighting, any conflict as foreplay. Let me put it that way. Just doesn't work for me. Mm-hmm. But it does tend to get used a lot in television and in literature. But
they're in their
Murtaugh looked hot. Oh my gosh.
I know he looks so hot. Well, they're supposed to be in the book, they're 80 something. So they are not that age in the show.
No.
Clearly.
In their 70s, maybe.
And I just want to no, I don't even think they're supposed to be that old. I think they're supposed to be in their late 60s, early 70s, maybe. Well, because people didn't age that well back then.
Jamie is 50. Jamie and so his mother would have been at least, he wasn't her first child. She was at least 20 years older than I'm just guesstimating because I don't know exactly when Jocasta was born. But that puts her around, if she was around Ellen's age at all, that puts her close to 70, somewhere around there. I don't know about Murtaugh.
Ellen was the oldest, and Jocasta was the youngest.
Yeah.
So that would have...
Brothers were in the middle. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she could be in her mid-60s.
Yeah. I think Duncan Lacroix is sleeping with someone in the wig department.
Yeah. How come his looks so great?
I want hair like that.
Well, his is the only one that looks so natural, so good. I mean,
he does look real.
Ooh,
whenever Duncan's hair goes white, he should just let it go, baby.
I mean, yeah, that was, now that's the only time that I've watched anyone on Outlander that gave Jamie a run for his money. And that scene when he was lounging with his leg up, I was like, whoa.
You look just like the centerfold from Cosmopolitan of Burt Reynolds, except
Yes.
Did you see Laugh Out what is it?
Laugh Outlander.
Lander did a little meme of that. Yeah,
no.
of Burt Reynolds and Murtaugh. It was great.
See that? What did it say?
It said, "Who did it better?"
Oh, that's where
no question.
Seeing, I can only think of her last two names, Doyle Kennedy.
Maria.
Seeing her now as she is, and then seeing her as Jocasta, you realize how phenomenal of an actress she is. I thought she was that age when I first saw her because I had not followed her on Facebook, so I mean on Twitter, so I didn't know how old she really was. So I thought she was an old woman, or an older woman. And when I saw how young she is, I thought, wow, she really, really plays that well. But that scene when he was like, come back to bed, I was like, whew.
Okay.
Did you notice when they were fighting? I thought, Catherine, for sure you would notice this. There's a moment where you just see the bottom half of Ulysses, and as soon as Murtaugh gets a little, "What do you mean?" or something like that, Ulysses drops his arms. He has his hands clasped. Yeah, he drops his arms to like watch it. Yeah. Did you guys catch that?
Yeah,
I didn't actually. I'm going to go back and watch that.
Very protective of her, and you know when she gets up to leave, I felt there was Ulysses was saying in the way he said it, you know, just don't mess with my mistress. You know, let us know if there's anything else we can do to make your stay more comfortable or something. I don't remember.
Totally. I mean, it's like dogs peeing on their, you know, like
it's like marking their territory.
The other thing that really worked for me is I thought Sophie did a great job in the birthing scene, especially for our first birth, you know, and she's a very intense person, so she would definitely birth in an intense way. But I was looking for the broken blood vessels in the later scenes after that. She was just so fully into that. I loved how they had the three women, you know, we talked about caste issues last time. You know, you have Jocasta, who's like this very prominent woman. You have Lizzie, who's an indentured servant, and then you have Phaedra, who's a slave. But birth is a great equalizer. Every woman gives birth in the same, you know, it's the same process, and we all go through it individually, but it is the equalizer. And I loved how they put those people there in their various dress and costumes and their various stations, but they were all there around her, and I just really, that hit me.
I didn't go back and read the book. I know, Carmen, you probably would know the book better in this regard. I didn't go back and read, but from what I understand from what I read on Twitter, and people's objection was that Jamie was there at the time of the birth. And to me, it was more realistic that he wasn't there at the time of the birth.
I was disappointed that the birthing scene didn't get into it with Claire and Jamie present. He was going to leave, and she said to him, "No, please stay." And she reached out to him and had him come up to her head. He wasn't down, you know, watching the birth, but he was up near her. She was afraid she was going to die.
I remember that,
He comforted her, and, you know, it helped heal the wound that had occurred because of what happened with Roger. I understand why they didn't do it, because it would have taken a lot of time to have Claire help her daughter give birth and Jamie there. Would have taken a big chunk of that hour, and they decided not to do that. So I missed that, but the decision that they did make, I'm happy with.
I have a feeling we're going to get that when the second child is born.
We may.
Oh, that's a good thought.
You know, it was a part of the book that was just very tender.
Yeah.
And, you know, very forgiving, you know, where people acknowledge that they've made a mistake and they get forgiveness from others. And that's a very wonderful thing when that happens in relationships. And I thought that was well portrayed in the book because Diana is a brilliant writer.
Yeah, I didn't have a thought when I was watching it like, "Oh, no, they didn't." I didn't have that
Mhm.
thought at all
I didn't either.
until I read about it, but, to me, I think it wouldn't have been believable because it would have been too rushed, their
Mhm.
reconciliation. I think it wouldn't have been believable.
This was one of the warts that I felt was in this episode. After all of the uh, negativeness of Bree toward Jamie in 2 episodes ago, she now says to Murtaugh, "Oh yeah, I've already forgiven him."
I think that the forgiveness aspect of that episode was incongruent with the events. It just didn't seem like things flowed well enough for someone who is as stubborn as Brianna to forgive her father without at least give an explanation, if nothing else.
Yeah, there was no
Um,
explanation. I'm
yeah.
hoping they'll come back. Maybe next season they'll come
Hmm.
back and we'll see what she went through in order to come to that.
I hope so.
Yeah, well, I mean, she said that she forgave Stephen Bonnet, and I guess you'd be like, "Well, if I can forgive my rapist, I guess I can forgive my dad."
Yeah, well, that makes sense, but I think, um,
Thought he was going to die.
yeah,
She thought Bonnet was going to die too, and she does.
yeah.
She's not looking at that end point with her father. She's looking at a life beyond where she is with her father. And I just thought it was unrealistic for her to say to Murtaugh, "Oh, I've already forgiven him," and then a sweet smile, and we don't have any context for it at all.
No, not at
Yeah.
all.
The only context is we did see her in 411, I think it was, when Lord John Grey is kind of talking to her and she says that she didn't say goodbye to Jamie, and then you can
Hmm.
see that she's thinking about, I
That's
didn't say goodbye to my dad. I didn't say goodbye to Jamie. He actually did this because he loved me. I could see her, she's had a lot of time to process.
that's
I
true.
just, I don't think they illustrated that, but I could buy it. But I can see what you guys are saying, but we want some sort of reconciliation between the two of them, like some kind of conversation and some kind of something.
Especially if they hear people, because I noticed that oftentimes in a future episode or a future season, they'll come back and do stuff that they've heard if they've gotten a lot of pushback from the fans. And that's what they did the ring, the song.
Yeah.
So
And Katrina B. Hewen, who was probably the chief ring person, is already on to the next thing. I'm like, Katrina, you need to express your gratitude. She wants them in the cave in the water scene. I don't know.
Oh,
She
wasn't that
responds
in season two or one, two,
one. She wants it,
one?
and I good for her. Good for her. She was successful with the ring,
Hmm.
so maybe. How about any standouts you guys want to mention in particular?
In terms of standout, I think that Sophie did a fantastic job. But for me, the standout was Roger and young Ian. Their facial expression, because most of the reaction to them was from facial expressions and not from anything they said or did. Other than that, it was just close-ups of their face or their reactions. Rick Rankin and Lauren Lyles are probably, to me, two of the best actors in Outlander. The last 2 episodes have really shown this as far as Rick is concerned. He really, really did a good job.
I do.
I agree.
I've seen him in several different things. He's very different in each one, and he's phenomenal in each one. You just can't. He doesn't carry any part of himself through to each character, and that's unusual. And it is a sign of, I think, of very, very good acting. But at this point, I'm missing Antoinette's voice so badly.
I know, because she would go,
Baby.
She was like, I don't like Roger. I really don't like Roger.
I just am blown out of the water by the subtleties of Sam's facial expressions. That man changes his eyelids and he can convey a completely different nuance or add a nuance to the level of his acting. It is phenomenal. I wrote a lesson on that way back in 2015 on his face, because I'm always blown out of the water by his ability to project his internal environment to whoever's observing him. And I just thought he was just, the look on his face when Bree comes out with her baby to meet them at River Run, and he sees her pain that Roger's not there. His face, honestly, I thought my heart was going to break. It was so tender and so empathetic and sympathetic for his daughter. And I just think that's just remarkable work.
I agree. And I also saw in that face a not knowing how she was going to receive him at the same time as feeling heartbroken for her. And just in the young Ian parting scenes, same. I thought Sam just so incredible in those.
I agree.
This was my favorite episode for Maria Doyle Kennedy. I think I've said this before, but I think she's just perfect as Jocasta. If you don't mind that she's not tall. She's pretty short, but she just plays those dualities of seeing everything but being blind, being a person of power who has to act that she's not because she's a woman, being actually warm and familial and maternal while being manipulative and very business shrewd and business minded. I just feel she plays all those things so well, and it's so believable to me. I really find her one of the highlights of the season for me. Did you guys have any sets or costumes or music?
Well, you know my set thing.
Walls? Go ahead, any walls?
I will reiterate what I said, or enlarge a little bit on what I said at first, and that is that the Mohawk people, or the First Nations that were expressing the Mohawk village to us, that village was incredible. It really was. John Gary Steele and his team just did an outstanding job with that. I liked the lacrosse, the rackets, and there were also in the previous episode 2 little kids that were running through the area, and they had the rackets, and then at the beginning of this they were playing it. But one of the things that I thought was really interesting to me was that in the village you could see the caste system expressed in the costumes and the acting, all the way from the chief down to Roger, who was at the bottom of the heap. And then in between, there were people who didn't have much ornamentation on their bodies and much clothes, all the way to Cohiladon, who had, this marvelous costume with the red coat, and to Catiasto, the woman, Carmen Moore, her name is. She played the one who did the otter tooth, who recited the otter tooth over speak. And I just thought that was just really remarkable that we could look into that and see that there. Oh, and the red stain on the, she had one on her right shoulder. I saw a couple, in re-looking at it, I saw a couple of men who had one on each shoulder and one who had a red stain on their left shoulder. Now, I asked Terry about that a couple of days ago, but Carmen tweeted back, because Terry couldn't remember the significance of it. That designates a warrior class. And I just thought it was really interesting that there was this hierarchy and that it was expressed very well. You could see it, you could appreciate it we have the same thing in our own culture in different ways. But I just thought that really made for an intense richness to the story.
Terry and her crew have done a phenomenal job with authenticity. And I think that her respect for her craft, for the history, comes through every single time in every single episode.
Yeah, I'm sorry to see her go. We're fingers crossed that her replacement will rise to the level that to the bar that that Terry has set.
She's already engaged, Nina Ayers, I think. I don't know
She-
how you say her last name, but she's, I believe that
Is she going to be the lead?
that's my guess because she's in the credits.
Yeah,
So I think we're already seeing her work, and
It's good.
yeah, I
Okay.
think she's been on the show for a while. So hopefully it'll be a pretty seamless handoff. I don't know. We'll see. I mean, John Gary Steele and Terry have been together for like 30 years. So their work has, you know, an interweaving a marriage that is seamless and is definitely something. There's something to that. So we'll see.
John Gary Steele and his, I mean, what can you say? I've been going through some of the older episodes, and I mean, who knew wall porn? I mean, seriously. The colors, the detail, the intricacies of the paneling, even in the idiot hut. I mean, I noticed that it was like the interweaving of the different colors of the leaves, the you know, thinking how in the world could he think that he couldn't get through, but then seeing on the outside how it was, you know, the lattice on the outside, then seeing the lattice on the inside. I mean, it was just every single place you looked, there was something of interest, but and like I've said this before, there are things that are there that if they were removed, you wouldn't notice. But them being there gave so much impact. But they didn't overpower everything else. And that is a balance that they managed to hit every single time. Is a level of genius that I don't think is as appreciated as it should be.
I was just thinking maybe I would talk about the lacrosse now. It's of particular interest to me. I just came back from my son's tryouts. You know, I hear talk in the house between him and my husband about lacrosse, and they talk about the fact that the Iroquois actually started lacrosse. I did a little bit of reading on it, and there's this family, the Thompsons. They have 4 boys who play, and they're current players on the Iroquois Nation team. And this team was put together in 1983. They were not recognized by Federation of International Lacrosse or something like that. They applied as a team in 1986 and they were rejected.
Oh.
This is 86 we're talking about here.
Wow.
They were allowed to enter in 1988. They played their first World Championship games in Australia in 1990, and they have had passport problems going into both England and Israel to play World Games because their passports as Iroquois Nation were not seen as valid. I mean, so this is recent history. You know, these guys talk about how they're given these sticks when they're born, literally. Their sticks are put into their cribs with them, and they learn to crawl around with them. It's a huge part of their culture.
I didn't realize that. That's interesting.
And they're considering playing the Iroquois national anthem before every lacrosse game now, which is really cool.
That would be
cool.
And then Nike signed a sponsorship deal with this team. So, you know, it's a classic one where they give them uniforms and they do spots for them. But it's pretty cool because part of the deal is they are influencing the clothing production that Nike does to use organic dyes and sustainable practices. And Nike also funds them to go to different American Indian locations and talk to the kids there. As recently as a month ago, I think it was a game in Philadelphia, there was an announcer. He was like a local guy. Get out there and snip those braids. And that was his way of saying, like, because they wear their hair long as a, observance. Yeah, this guy said that and he was fired. This was like a month ago.
I was going to say, I don't think that would go over very well these days.
Yeah, but it's crazy that there's that unconscious
bias.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised. We don't know our history very well.
No, we don't. And especially when they invented the game. I can't pronounce what the Iroquois name for lacrosse was. I saw it the other day, but I can't pronounce it. But
it was named by French fur traders who felt like that their sticks look like monks the way they carry their crosses.
Oh,
yeah. So they called it lacrosse. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Huh. That close. I can't help but feel that at this moment, Antoinette would say something about the Jamaican bobsled team, but that's just me.
Right, so now we're going to move into the juicy parts and talk about what did not work for us in this episode. Who wants to go first?
What didn't work for me was the interaction between Myrta and Bree, which is Carmen mentioned also. There's the flippantness of that. The other was that they didn't show enough of a reaction of Ulysses with the whole Jocasta and Myrta situation. I have a feeling that might come out next season, but I just didn't feel like there was enough. Given all the past where they allowed Colin McFarlane to express his thoughts in his face, they just seemed to cut that this time. And it just seemed like this episode was wrought with opportunities for him to react, and they just didn't show them. The other part that didn't work for me was the ending. I just felt it was just flat after everything else. It just kind of fell flat. It's like they should have ended with the British people coming through and handing it, maybe so that it's kind of left as more of a cliffhanger than ending with, that Jamie's not going to do anything to arrest Myrta. So, I mean, it just seemed disingenuous. It seemed incongruent, and I just didn't think that it was a proper ending to the episode enough, but the season, absolutely not.
Good point. Yeah, it was a little bit of a cheap. Dunno.
Intellectually lazy.
Okay, so anything else?
No, that was the most for me. I actually enjoyed most of it.
Apparently they had intended to end it when Bree came out of the house and met her parents and said, "Where's Roger?" And that's where it was supposed to end. And at least it was written but that way. And then, with the soldiers coming in, and delivering the missive, they could have ended it there without saying what the missive had in it. That might have been a little bit more of a cliffhanger than the one that we got. But I do think that it was better than her walking out and saying, "Where's Roger?" I think that's like leaving Jimmy in a cave for 3 years.
We would all been like, what?
Yeah, we would have made a bigger fuss over that one, I think. I thought it was really interesting. I did the math. You might expect I would. Okay, the trip to and back from the Ridge to New York took about 8 to 9 months. Okay, she was 2 months along. Then they got there when the baby was 2 months old. So it's somewhere, maybe it took them a little while to actually leave. So let's just fudge a bit and say it was between 8 and 9 months they were gone. That's 1,700 miles. That means they only made 5 miles a day.
That was lazy.
And it seems like those three could have made better time than that. Now, you could say
But then they would have had to have the birthing scene.
Well,
right.
that's assuming that
That's
the
right.
jumping back and forth was actually in line, as opposed to different scenes from different times.
Well, no, she's
Like,
saying that overall the time
that's
they
true,
left
I
when
guess.
she was 2 months pregnant,
Right.
and then they came back when the baby was 2 months old. So however you slice it.
So,
Yeah, that's true.
probably took them a while to find where that village was. They didn't just wander directly into it. So that could have eaten up some time, but still that's not very good. And I know why they did it that way, because they made the choice that they weren't going to be there for the birth, so they had to prolong it. But whenever you make decisions like that, there are consequences to those decisions.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Somebody-
because Carmen is going to have her calculator and figuring out how far away New York is. Okay, but that didn't even occur to me. So, damn it. Why are they so slow? And then Roger. So it took
Mhm.
Roger even longer to get back.
Well, yeah, because in the book he wanders around for a while and he goes back. That's when he finds the stones. Is when he is trying to decide whether or not he's going to. Isn't it? Wasn't that when?
I thought so.
By the time he got back, remember his foot was badly infected and Claire
Yeah.
had to read it and things like that. So, um, yeah, he said he needed time. So he was off,
Mhm.
Thinking about what he really wanted to do. And who knows, maybe he went to those stones and
Mhm.
found them again, and sat nearby and thought about whether he was going to go back or not.
Well, speaking of stones, he's riding that very bouncy fashion with no undies on. And I was like, this guy would have rolled one or two so many times. I think on this journey, I don't know. I don't have balls, but I just when he came bouncing in, I'm like, couldn't they give him like a quarter horse or something that was?
I thought about that too. However, I would imagine that after about 3 weeks of riding a horse, his skin probably toughened a little bit. I don't think it would have been that much different than, if anyone else. I mean, you think traditional dress of some of the best horsemen in the world were, indigenous Americans. And so
True.
it's not like they, I guess buckskin
They weren't riding Frisians though.
No, that's true.
I mean, that horse has so much movement in its trot, like a quarter horse, which is what the Native Americans are. They just like
kind of go straight. Okay.
Yeah,
I'll take your word for it.
Actually, I got to say something, and that is in the U.S., in the colonies, they didn't have those kinds of horses. They didn't have Frisians and the draft horses in those days because they were too big and they ate too much. The ships weren't equipped to carry large number of those kinds of horses over. Now, I'm sure that there were rich people like George Washington and some,
and Philip Wiley.
Philip Wiley, who is a real character,
who has Frisians. That's his thing.
That they were able to do that, but the average person did not have. They had ponies because they were
smaller. Yeah.
At least that's what I've read. Now,
but and Jocasta may have had some Frisians, but as a horse person, I know that's just the same horse they've been using since season 1. So that's when they have to put them on.
Just recycle the horses. No one's doing
yeah, they are. They get reused.
Did you notice how tidy and clean those trade blankets were after being carried by horseback for 700 miles?
Oh yes, they were so nicely folded and in little.
No, I didn't notice that.
From the dry cleaners, and I'm like, I don't think they would have made it, Patty, looking like that.
Wait, so which?
When they're trading.
Oh, when they're trading, yeah.
Right. They're over the back of one of the horses, and they're all. Did you notice in the opening scene where the mother is sitting there and the two boys in their costumes are running past Ottertooth and he is annoyed? Did you notice what was at her feet? There's 2 trick-or-treat bags. They say trick-or-treat on the outside. So I assume it was right. They were dressed for Halloween.
Halloween.
That's one I wanted to call your attention to. And then another one is, I think we may have caught a glimpse of Emily.
Ooh.
With her hands. Do you remember?
Yeah, I know who she is. She's the girl that Ian falls in love with in
Right.
the Native American village. But which girl was Emily? We're gonna have to all go back and watch.
Okay, now if you look at when they're coming in to try to steal Roger out of the village during the evening, there's a drumming scene. Do you remember where they're sitting in a circle and there's chanting and drumming going on? The camera rests on a really beautiful young woman who it's kind of a side angle, and then she turns her head so you can see her full side profile. She's lovely. And I thought to myself, when I saw that, I thought, oh my God, I wonder if that's Emily, because why would the camera rest on this girl like that?
Yeah.
And so we'll see. Jamie Spyglass?
Yeah.
From season 3? I saw one blogger say, where did that come from? And I'm like, well, from season 3. It must have survived the shipwreck. well, their trunk, the shipwreck survived 4 miles down the coast. So
yeah,
it could have, some of their clothes made it. So
her boots with zippers made it.
Her boots and some of her dresses.
Yeah. Yep. Well, what didn't work for me was the Indian chief. I was like, this guy looks like he just got out of his car and walked over and did the scene. And I bet he has like bristly, short, gray, salt and pepper hair under that Burger King crown that he's wearing.
The man king whose hair comes like this.
Don King?
Don King.
Yeah, Don King.
That guy did not work for me. I felt like he was just a dude, some dude. They had him speak English the whole time. And the chief wouldn't be like, I'm kicking you out of the tribe and I'm doing it in English. And then she responds in Mohawk. I don't know. I just felt like
I felt like he seemed very contemporary for that time.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, he did seem awfully contemporary.
And then I just have to say that as badass as Claire is, I'm not buying that she is helping Roger, carrying a knife. She's 50-something, and she's fighting off Indian braves that are half her age, as they're running through the jungle. And she's like, oh, and they're like, oh. I was like, oh, come on.
I only saw her hit one. Was there more?
Well, they ducked right in the right time. And then they, it just that. And then in the podcast, Tony said that Katrina was like, give me a knife. I want to be part of the, and it's like, that's not consistent with her character. Claire picks herbs and she's been chopping some wood, but you can't tell me that she's going to be able to fend off Indian braves in the prime of their lives.
That pirate.
What?
Remember what she did to the pirate in season 3?
Yeah, but she wasn't carrying a limping man.
No, but I think she can kill. She also killed a soldier in the first book.
No, I'm not saying that she wouldn't do it if she could. I'm saying physically, I didn't buy it. I think she would she would kill to protect her family, but I just felt like it was kind of like.
I think that whole scene was a bit clunky.
Yeah, that just I didn't buy that. And then the fact that the women, there was the woman who led the band of Indians who, and then Claire's the one she talks to. I felt like that was all a nod to the modern woman.
Well, actually, I don't think so. I think that a lot of the Native American were very maternalistic. There was women who got to choose their spouses. It was the women who got to choose where they lived. It was a woman. So it was that's something that got destroyed, I think, through modernization.
I got it, but were they leading a warrior tribe.
She had a warrior status on her.
Yeah, she on her sleeve.
Yeah, I don't think they would put that. That wasn't if they hadn't written that.
And I think she was part of the I guess what would be the equivalent of royal lineage.
Yeah, her grandfather was the chief remember when Ottertooth was when they chased him down and killed him. She said,
okay, all right.
Yeah, but however, I have to say, the fact that they showed him in modern time with the very stone that somehow survived, the stone, that was the stone that got him through, unless he had two of them. But even then, how would he have had two? They both would have been destroyed coming
maybe
through.
More than one.
But he had to have found another one once he got there, but it was the same stone, so that didn't make sense.
Let's see. Oh, I'll just mention that Tony said that when they were doing all the scenes in the Mohawk village, it was the hottest day on record ever in Scotland.
Wow.
And coincidentally, I was an hour and 15 minutes down the road at Loch Earn with my children and my husband, and they learned to water ski on that loch on that day right down the road.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
The hottest day in history. It was so hot while we were there. My family was calling it Scotland.
I think the fact that they did not use the Mohawk as window dressing is a testament to their respect for the material, respect for also Diana's respect for the true history. It's fictional. She's not trying to right any wrongs of society or history or anything else, and I appreciate that about her. She's not trying to make slavery seem more palatable. She's not trying to make Native Americans seem, less palatable. I mean, it was what it is. It is what it is. It's fiction, and that's what she presents it as. And I think that one of the things I do appreciate about the show is that they have stayed pretty true to that. They haven't tried to whitewash slavery, no pun intended. They haven't tried to make the Native Americans seem caricatures, which I was a little worried about when I knew that they had actors coming in. I was actually even concerned that when they said they were bringing in First Nation actors, that they were going to be bringing in people who didn't have real ties to their culture, and that is clearly not the case. And so I think they've been very respectful, and I think they've had to be, but also I think that they would have been even if, that weren't the case. I just found that the whole use of First Nation actors has been done very, very well throughout. And I think that that's something to be respected for Outlander.
I agree. And it harkens back, this is what's so crazy about this show is it's such a, art imitates life thing. But we heard from so many Scottish people in season 1 about how it was so wonderful to be dealing with this material and portraying and about their history.
In their histories. It is not in schools.
Yeah, and they were getting to visit this material and the Bonnie Prince Charlie and all that stuff. And on Twitter you hear the same from the Native American actors that just how much they relished this chance to portray these realistic characters.
But one of the things I didn't understand, though, given last episode at the end, when I want to say his name correctly, Kaheleton, when him and the baby, and then to have his part so reduced in this last episode didn't make sense to me. He was just there as like in the background, but it's like there was this whole thing of the baby, and with him it just seemed like that should have somehow carried over into the last episode.
But he gives new name to the term pusher.
Pusher? Ooh.
He's the one that shoved Roger.
Oh yeah.
Into the gauntlet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he has great facial expression.
Oh
He's
gosh,
a
yeah.
he's a
Woo!
great actor. And
He is.
Carmen, you brought up on 411
He's
right
good looking.
before 412 how hot he is.
Oh
And
yes.
I was like, oh yeah, I didn't really. And then in
Oh,
412, I was like,
Yeah,
doing.
kind of cougarish, but hey. You know,
Speak for yourself.
old enough to be his mom, but I don't care.
How old is
He
he? How old is he?
can't be in his 30s. He can't maybe 30.
no more than that, I would say. But
Yeah.
I'm thinking he's between 20 and 30, somewhere in that. You were talking about when they told Claire to leave and Jamie to leave. He's glaring at Jamie. You look at him, you can see his masseter right here, the
Popping.
crack
Yes.
in his cheek. He
He's
just
really good about
his teeth, and he looks fierce. I'd get out of there.
Mm,
That was a good exchange, but because Jamie gives it right back. Like,
yeah.
let me just be clear.
Yeah.
I think they respect each other. Is there
Yeah.
any medical stuff you wanted to talk about before you go on your date, Carmen?
Yes.
Other than the birthing scene and thinking how much things have changed, in terms how much things have changed and yet how much things have stayed the same. What I thought was very realistic was the grimace that Bree gave when she lifted up and tried to push herself off off on the bed. Um, that was very realistic. She was probably extremely sore.
Yeah.
Um, but at the same time, that the fact when you hold your child for the first time, you just forget all of it. In terms of the other medical stuff besides the birth, I mean, most of it is just Roger somehow managing to maintain his same size throughout his ordeal, which was unlikely.
It must have been the French fries after work.
And of course, anytime you mention Roger, of course I think of Antoinette. I didn't really have a whole lot. I mean, other than the anatomical things, thinking like when they're looking at Murta, thinking he has really nice proportions. But other than that, no, I mean the length of his thigh versus the length of his torso. I mean, he's just very well proportioned.
Yeah, so we would be talking about Duncan there.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've noticed that about Duncan. The other thing I notice a lot about many of the actors are their hands. Duncan has beautiful hands, so does Sam. Oh my gosh, they have beautiful hands.
Beautiful fingers and hands.
I like Sam's forearms. Not that we're objectifying here, but appreciating beauty. I think his forearms are really beautiful.
Yes. This particular book, though, was probably my least favorite. So I skimmed this. I skimmed a lot of this.
Really? I love this book. I love this book.
I skimmed it. My favorite was Voyager, but
that's my favorite too. Actually.
I felt the production was really well done in that it removed a lot of the stuff that I felt was unnecessary in the books, as well as brilliant as Diana writes and as wonderfully as she creates an image in how she writes and some of the nuances in her language. I find it intellectually challenging enough, but within a genre that's not really. Think that combination is really great. But I just found that in the books, I enjoy the medical stuff. Some of it, even though it's implausible, but I don't look for it in the show. This is a thing, though. We call it medical, and it is medical technically, but other than the actual medicine that Claire performs, I think a lot of it, and the reason why, Carmen, you get so much more out of it than I do, is because a lot of it is anatomical. And even though anatomy and medicine are of course married in a lot of ways, the actual process is not really shown in the show.
Yeah. So I agree, Catherine, and I think that the difference is that medicine is applied science.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a basic scientist. Medicine is applied science, and just like engineering is applied physics, basically.
Mm-hmm.
What I would like to say about this that caught my eye was the injury to Roger's shoulder.
I forgot about that. Yeah.
Gauntlet, you see the warrior raise his club and he strikes him on the left shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought of two things instantly, either a dislocated a posterior or, posterior dislocation of the head at the humerus, or a fracture
Clavicle.
or crack in the clavicle.
Clavicle. Mm-hmm.
Now, his position of his arm being, you can't see me, but I'll stand up for a minute, being held against, the sling made out of deer hide, is holding his arm in this position. That is the position that for years has been used for a broken clavicle, to hold it against the body while it heals. And it won't if it's held in that position, it will heal, because the clavicle has so many ligaments and muscles that attach to it. It doesn't tend to drift very much if you have it stationary. And so that's why he doesn't have a sling on anymore, in my opinion. When he gets to River Run, it's had time to heal, and he doesn't have to wear it anymore. So my bet would be a fracture or a crack in his clavicle. The dislocation would be really bad, because what happens is the ligaments and muscles will contract, and then you have trouble getting it back in, even if you know how to reduce a dislocation.
Which is what Claire did, to Jamie in season one, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, and he was a few hours out, so it probably hurt him worse than. I have to tell you a story. One time, we were doing water slides, my family and I came down the water slide after my husband, and he walked out of the pool, and his right arm was hanging down, like, he was drooped over like this. We were all in our swimming suits. And I saw him walk over. Remember, he's a physician. So he walks over to this post, and he lifts up his arm like this and grasps that post and then pulls back. And he had dislocated it had an anterior dislocation as he was going down the slide, but he knew what it was instantly. And he takes a hold of this thing and diagnosed it and reduced the dislocation all at the same time. This is one of the reasons why I'm still with him after 56 years. He's really smart.
Oh, that's wonderful.
That's like for Carmen. That's like someone bringing flowers and chocolate. It's like
pioneer man married to pioneer woman.
There's not too much to say about Ottertooth and his, them chopping his head. We could see that split in his skull when he was when he met Claire in that episode. So it already was split down. But that's really the only medical that I really saw. If you remember in the books, there was a little boy playing lacrosse, and he dislocated his arm, and Claire saw him running to his mother, and she puts it back into place, and they're very impressed with her medical skills. So I just wanted to say, that those kinds of things, they're all over the place in Outlander.
I remember reading it thinking, those are one of those things that make everyone think doctors are miracle workers, because you have this child walking around who won't use their arm, and all they do is just take their arm and twist it, and they're like, ooh.
One of the things in this episode was that, and Tony confirmed this in the podcast, in the exchange, when Jamie sends Ian off to talk to the council, I thought immediately Last of the Mohicans, because Major Duncan is speaking to the Iroquois chief, who really did look like a chief, in my opinion, in that film, and tells him, take me instead, let the Long Caribbean go. That harkened immediately, and she said she had that in mind. Remember when Claire goes upstairs and says, I would like to check in on Bree, and she goes upstairs, and she's telling her she wants her to come home to the ridge with them, and they'll take care of her. Bree rests her head on her mother's bosom and then closes her eyes. And that reminded me of Christian Bale at the end of The Empire of the Sun, when
Mm.
he finally reunites with his mother and he just rests into her and closes his eyes at the very end. What a relief to lay your
Mhm.
on someone else whom you trust and know will help you carry it.
Mhm.
And your mother. I mean, there's nothing like.
There's nothing
It
like
was real. It was realistic.
Yeah, very.
I
I
was very
agree.
moved by that. In the fight between Roger and Jamie,
Mhm.
beating reminded me of Rupert's beating of him in episode.
Yes.
The way
He made the same faces like, "Urgh."
yeah, it reminded me a lot of that. He took a beating there as well. And then when finally Roger falls to exhaustion and they fall into each other's arms, reminded me of
Mhm.
one, the battle joined where he and
Blackjack.
Blackjack
Blackjack.
ended up
Mhm.
embraced. That's some
Yeah.
observations I made.
Well, I loved that because I felt it was different than Blackjack because I felt that Jamie took the abuse and then actually held Roger in his exhaustion. That
Mhm.
he held him
Mhm.
like, I support this, I support you.
I think the feelings were very different too, Courtney.
Yeah.
I just saw the visuals
Mhm.
Yeah.
between the two.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
loved the line when he said, "That's the last blow that will go unanswered."
I did
Yes.
too.
It's so Jamie, just like,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, that's over. And now I'm
Mhm.
about to
Yeah.
pull out a can of whoop ass.
Yeah. And he's like, I'm still not convinced I like you very much, but I'm not going to kill you because my daughter loves you.
Oh yeah, he was so great when he was just like, are you gonna come home and are you gonna, just really believable.
Yeah.
Oh,
Um,
He's
Lieber,
like, I don't care.
I,
Yeah, I
I
like that line too.
have that sleek way about
Yeah.
that was
That whole
such a great,
exchange. That
so
whole
good. When he's like,
exchange.
you sound like a lunatic.
you. And then I can't. You were fond of marriage since you've had 3 years.
You're about to be number 4, baby. So do you guys think they're gonna get married at the gathering?
I don't think so.
No? Oh, because he's a wanted criminal.
Yeah.
That
Well,
puts a little
they're going to
wrinkle.
end up figuring something out with that because they took away the impotence story, so they're going to have to.
They sure did.
Yeah. So they're probably going to end up being where they're going to get married, and because of who she is, and if she gives her word, they can't really do anything. I have a feeling there's going to be something where her influence is going to stop him from being.
Somehow. I don't know how, but that's what I
Yeah.
do.
Or they're going
Well-
to change his appearance completely, like shave him and do something else.
Well, here's the thing is, in the book, Jocasta is an equal partner with Hector in helping the Jacobites with the gold.
Yes.
Mhm.
And so I could see where they would pick up that thread and continue it with Myrta, because he's asked her to join him.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And so there would have to be a compromise.
Yeah. I thought it was funny when near the end when it was obvious to everyone that Murta and Jocasta were in a
That was a
relationship.
great scene when they
The
all go like,
facial expressions. Oh my gosh. You had Jamie looking like, what am I seeing? And Claire's like,
WTF.
whoa.
Yeah.
No.
Because they're all concerned about like, okay, we got to hide Myrtle, but it was a perfect time to introduce it.
That would have been a perfect time also to show Ulysses' reaction.
Yeah, but
And they
is
didn't.
that critical to that scene?
No, even if not so much, even if it's just off to the side,
Yeah.
showing his face, but they didn't even give him. He was hidden.
Yeah.
I mean, just letting him, because in every other scene they show him in the background, and they let us he adds to the scene.
Yeah.
They didn't allow him to add to any of those scenes really.
He did with the arm movement. That was it that I
some
saw.
of that I think is him. I mean, he is a phenomenal actor.
Yes.
He is. He is.
And he's read the books,
Mm-hmm.
and he understands the character.
Yeah.
And he does a lot of things. He's a very cerebral actor as well. So he's thought through a lot of what he's going to do in those scenes. And some of it is the direction and some of it's his own. But I thought that scene was hilarious.
That scene, that was one of my favorite scenes.
Yes. Yeah. It really was great. It was. I just got such a kick out of their faces. They were just like, oh.
Like, whoa. And it was like
in their characters, their faces did that. You know, it was, you know, Jamie's kind of like,
what?
His like, face was a little bit like,
he was like, what? Yeah.
Gross. Speaking of that, you know, I did a piece that was Murtaugh was spotted in season 4. Will he get married? What I thought was they weren't going to have him replace Duncan Innes, but he was going to get together with Jocasta as Murtaugh.
Yeah.
I've had that feeling the whole time. And then I found this old Q&A that Duncan did before he left Twitter, so it's got to be a while ago. It's September 2017, and Peaceful Pirate says, we had one love scene in season 2. What actress would you want Murtaugh to romance? This is back. Mm-hmm. This is a season 3 Q&A. And do you want to hear his answer?
Yes.
Duncan, anyone with bad enough eyesight to take the job. And they have him with a blind person.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious.
Talk about the Outlander effect. Or maybe, you know, they did say that they've been planning this, so maybe he did know at the time. I don't know, but I thought that was pretty funny. Did you guys hear on the podcast that they said, you know, because people said, we wanted Claire to hand the baby to Jamie, and then apparently the baby cried when they handed it to
Yes,
to
I heard
Sam?
about that.
Yeah.
The baby cried every time he held the baby.
Happened Marcelly's baby too, didn't it? That I think that I'd read that too, that baby also cried when they never got around Sam.
Sam just doesn't have a way with babies, I guess.
Oh, wow.
Not
the baby whisperer. He's going to have to work on that because Jamie is, you know,
he did it in season 1. Was it? Yeah, season 1 when he held the baby.
Oh, right. That baby was asleep, though.
Or was that baby real?
That was on.
Was that a real baby?
She was real, but she was asleep. Maybe they have to like conk them out and then.
Interesting. And there's just a lot of negativity. I mean, I've read things as small as, why are Phaedra's nails manicured? Like, that's not realistic. And I'm like, you know, just because people were slaves didn't mean they didn't have their vanities.
Yeah, and especially she's in the house.
Exactly. It's like she's not going to have dirt under her nails. And then someone did point out manicures were around then. You know, people did get manicures. They may not have gotten polished, but they got, you know, manicures, and they buffed their nails. You know,
I felt bad about all the negativity about the birthing scene. It's like it's taken over. And, you know, this episode is such a beautiful offering that I feel that has become too big and taken away from what should be a little bit more gratitude.
You know, I said at the very beginning that I missed that part in the book because it's a very touching scene. But I can understand why they had to do this, because it would have taken a huge chunk of time out of this episode. And he had a lot of story to tell in it. Now, if they had taken an hour and a half like they have done, you know, once in the past, then they might.
Why did they not do that? I was surprised when I saw that it was a full hour. Usually they're like 53 minutes and it was 59. But I was really surprised that it wasn't 90 minutes because they had so much left to tell.
Now, what do you all think about the voiceovers? I like them. I hear a lot of people don't. I think that they're going to give a roundness to episodes. And I think what they do is that in situations where you don't want to have viewers speculate, they can sort of give that nuance that you can't give always with acting. The last time, I mean, they used it with Jamie reading the letter, but I've noticed that, like in the earlier episodes, they use Claire a lot. They stopped doing that.
I think that Ron has talked about that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hasn't he said something about that? They don't like to overuse it. And I think
Mm,
they use it judiciously. I think that, like the Otter Two story, it was enabled it to be told very briefly.
yeah.
You
Mm-hmm.
got the idea of what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
It was done very succinctly, but I don't think doing it all the time is as
No, yeah, I understand that, but
Yeah,
I like it.
I think it's a dramatic technique that has to be used sparingly. Otherwise, it feels kind
Mhm.
of chintzy.
I love the drone shot of the three canoes from above. I thought
Yes, that
beautiful,
was well done.
just
Yeah.
just gorgeous.
The whole, yeah, they've been using that quite a bit in the last few episodes, and I just very well though.
Mhm.
At the jail, and
Mhm.
then this time,
Mhm.
I know we haven't talked about 412, but I think the cinematography is just fantastic. I think it's just so sophisticated,
Yes.
and so you can
Artistic.
tell also from early on, because I've been going through some of the old episodes. I kind of been binging on Outlander while I was sick. But I just find that the you can tell how over time that their budget has increased, that they're just by the production, and it's just
Mhm.
really so well done. And this last one, this last season, was just absolutely phenomenal. And again, John Gary Steele and his team. I mean, I mean, genius comes in many forms, and we have a representation of genius every single week.
If you think of everything he did,
Hmm.
River Run,
Yeah,
huge. The whole town of Wilmington, huge. The Mohawk Village, huge.
huge.
And then everything, every set and location, all the
Hmm.
rooms at River Run,
Hmm.
everything in between, the theater.
Yeah,
In season one is like child's play
yeah.
compared to this. He deserves a nomination.
Oh gosh, yes. Yeah, well, I
And
live in the Carolinas, and there was no way you could have told me that was Scotland.
yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
it
with the
looks that
moss
looks
and yeah.
everything, even when they were just going through the trees and just the pine, and we have what we call Georgia pine, and it looked like they were Georgia pine in every single in the scene where they were showing pine trees. I mean, there was nothing that ever stood out that said, "Okay, that's not realistic."
They were
Every single part of it looked like like a Carolina.
they were careful not to show Caledonia pines in those
Mm-hmm.
shots because they have a round top on them, and
Mm-hmm.
that's a really sort of a giveaway that you're living
Mm-hmm.
in Scotland when you do that. They even had the rhododendron hill. Remember when I mean it wasn't emphasized, but remember when Roger climbs out of it in 2 episodes ago, I think it was, and he had hid from the warriors who were chasing him.
Mm-hmm.
That's a rhododendron hill. I climbed into one in North Carolina. They're pretty.
Of
Was this
course.
after you read the book? Why did you do
Oh yeah,
this?
yes, because I
Oh, yeah.
was
Oh,
like,
I thought you were
And
going to say, is this after you shot the deer or before you skinned it?
no,
no,
I
I figure she would have climbed in it because she read the book and wanted to
know,
see if
I'm
it was really
teasing.
like that.
exactly
Yeah.
Hanging Rock State Park,
Mhm,
and there's rhododendrons all over that mountainside.
mhm.
They're very thick, and it was January, so they had dropped some of their leaves. But I could see where it could really be pretty disorienting if you got into one of those. And
Mhm.
there were rhododendrons in the where they were filming in Scotland, so they looked for them, and found the
Yeah.
area.
Wow.
So Carmen, were you with your family? Were they like, "What are you doing?"
Yes, they're all
I
Is it like my family where they go, "Is this an Outlander thing?"
yes.
know. That's what they're like.
I
My family says I'm in a cult.
I'll be relating, we'll be talking about a serious subject, life lesson kind of thing, and I'll say, "Well, like an Outlander," and I see their face, they're like,
Yeah. Oh gosh.
oh
had
god.
a child that I go to visit there. He's my youngest, and he's just so patient. but I'm sure it is mine. He's sort of thinking, like, this is
That's
another.
funny.
This is my mom's off her rocker.
Yeah. Or
Yeah.
my daughters would say, "You're just so extra." It's like, why are you so extra?
I haven't heard that one.
Oh, yeah.
I just get, you're weird, Mom.
Mhm. I get that too.
Yeah.
I wanted to say something about the idea of adopting, when the chief says it's not a fair trade. We haven't fairly traded, so we're not going to give you Roger, dog face
Mhm.
here.
Mhm.
The I don't know enough about the Mohawks to know if they did that, but I know that some tribes did, and nations did. But I was reading about the Mohawk this last week, and in the late 1600s, there were about 5,000 members of that nation.
Mhm.
By the time 100 years later, there was only 500 left.
Yeah.
So you could understand that under those circumstances that they may have been much more open to adopting people into their tribes. I keep saying it's a tribe, it's a nation. It's my understanding
It's a
nation
nation.
was a confederacy of 5 or 6 nations.
I think the Mohawk were one of the Iroquois nation.
Yeah, the Iroquois is a confederation, I believe.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know if people, found that hard to believe, but I
Mhm.
think it is believable when you look at the context of what
Mhm.
what happened to them over that 100 years.
And I think that's partly why also they absorbed runaway slaves
Yes.
Mhm.
as well, for that same reason, which is also why Otter's Tooth Warning made sense to them.
Mhm.
But I would be interested to see how much more they delve into that.
I like the little bit of warming that seemed to occur in this between Claire and Aunt Jo.
Mm-hmm.
They parted on not very good or warm terms. And
Mm-hmm.
I was just pleased to see that sort of melt a little bit in this episode.
Yeah, I was too. And I felt Jocasta was very forgiving because Clara was a douchebag.
Yeah, she was.
Yeah.
Well, I think we hashed it all out, didn't we?
I think so. I just
Yeah.
miss Antoinette so much.
I know. She'll be back.
I love
What?
you guys.
Love
I
you
love
too.
you both.
Have a great time on your date
All
and
right.
happy
Bye. Have fun.
anniversary.
Happy. I know. That is just wonderful.
Wait, you didn't get out your Anatomy for Dummies today.
I saw that.
Have fun. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.